Welcome to U.S. Immigration TV. Well, the news of the sudden detention or deportation of an Orange County, California couple who lived in the U.S. for over 35 years and who have never broken the laws has sent shockwaves through the immigrant community throughout the U.S. Some people are pointing out that this case is part of a troubling trend during the Trump administration, where immigrants living in the U.S. without legal authorization, out of status, but have no criminal history are being detained during routine check-ins with CBP or ICE, and in some cases are put on a plane and deported. But in this particular case, you have to dig deep into the article or the news story to figure out that this couple and their immigration violations were in fact included among the Trump administration's enforcement priorities. Now, this is because they already had a final order of deportation, and that's why they were picked up or detained and subject to deportation. Now, according to an article in the Los Angeles Times, there are probably like 4 major reasons why the Trump administration is finally deporting this couple, even though they have several U.S.-born, U.S. citizen children who are now more or less on their own. It is truly a sympathetic and compelling story, but here are some of the reasons. Well, first, this couple entered the U.S. through Mexico in 1989 near San Ysidro, California. That's near San Diego and the Mexican border. And they applied for political asylum in 1992. Now, most likely, they crossed the border without a visa or without inspection. In other words, entry without inspection. Number 2, their asylum claims were denied, and as a result, they were placed in deportation proceedings. Now, the couple appeared before an immigration judge in March of 2000, and they agreed to leave the U.S. voluntarily. Now, that's called voluntary departure, perhaps. But instead, they decided to remain in the U.S., and they filed many appeals on their cases. Well, that appeal process finally ended in 2021 when they exhausted all of their appeals. Now, there had been an arrangement with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that they would not be deported right away, but they would have to check in with ICE periodically to let them know we're still here and we haven't committed violations. But finally, number 4, when they came for their routine check-in with ICE in February of 2025, ICE finally decided to act on that deportation order and send them back to their home country based on the final deportation order. Now, can this couple ever return to the U.S.? Well, as a result of that deportation order, even with petitions by their U.S. citizen daughters, the couple may not be eligible to return to the U.S. for at least 10 years unless they're eligible for certain waivers, like waiver for the deportation, waiver for being out of status for more than 1 year, the 10-year bar. Now, what could they have done differently? I would have said, and again, this is just my opinion and my speculation, that rather than applying for political asylum when they first came to the U.S., this couple could have been petitioned by an employer when they first arrived or soon thereafter, and they might have been citizens by now. If they are now petitioned by their U.S. citizen daughters, but they entered the U.S. without inspection, stuck across the border, they would have needed to have been petitioned before April 2001 under Section 245I. But back when they entered the U.S. originally, they could have been petitioned before April 2001 by an employer, and they could have been eligible for a green card. Instead, they took the asylum route and all the deportations. Now, I certainly sympathize with this couple, but the Trump administration had already announced that among their enforcement priorities would be people who have final orders of removal or deportation but have not yet left the country. Now, Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, noted that, and I quote, "The priorities will focus on public safety threats, national security threats, and fugitives." The important word there is fugitives. He further said that people who went through the deportation or removal process, and I quote, "got due process at great taxpayer expense, and the federal judge ordered them removed, but they didn't leave, and now they became fugitives." In other words, if a person has been ordered deported, they went through the deportation process, presented their case to an immigration judge, appealed and all that stuff, but did not leave, they are considered fugitives and therefore enforcement priorities. And that's exactly what this couple was considered. Ordered deported, didn't leave. Now Tom Homan, the border czar, believes that deportation orders must be carried out. Otherwise, the orders are meaningless. In other words, why order someone deported if they're not being removed? So, according to the Trump administration, remaining in the U.S. after being ordered deported is not considered law-abiding. They said that these were law-abiding people, and the Trump administration says, no, they broke the law, they were ordered deported, they didn't go, so they're not law-abiding. So this is important, Homan stated that enforcement priorities include, number one, national security and public safety threats. Now, Homan emphasized that the initial focus of enforcement efforts will be on individuals who pose a threat to national security or public safety. It could be like the terrorists. Another enforcement priority, and this might apply to this particular Orange County couple, those with final orders of removal. Those who have been removed by a federal judge or immigration judge but have not left the country are also considered to be a priority. Another enforcement priority right now are convicted criminals. Homan said that there are over 1.5 million convicted criminal aliens with orders for removal who will be targeted. And we see a lot of sweeps by ICE to pick up those people. Another enforcement priority are gang members. Homan has also mentioned that thousands of gang members will be targeted for removal. In fact, we're seeing a lot of these cases going up to the U.S. Supreme Court where Tren de Agua are being picked up and sent to these maximum security prisons in El Salvador where they shave their heads and it's like they're in cages. Another enforcement priority are illegal entrants. The new enforcement priorities or policy will also prioritize those people apprehended at the border who are trying to enter the U.S. unlawfully, sneak in or swim across the river. Another enforcement priority person or people are those who have been convicted of significant or multiple misdemeanors. So if you or somebody you know has a final order of removal, I would strongly suggest that you consult with an attorney before filing for any kind of immigration benefit, even a petition by a U.S. citizen child or spouse. And if you are a green card holder, you better be careful about filing for naturalization or leaving the U.S. for a brief vacation. Now, in the past, if a person had a prior removal order, the government would sometimes agree to reopen and dismiss that case to clear the way for the person to secure legal status in the U.S., let's say through a spouse or child's petition. But under Trump, the government may not be as flexible or lenient. So in closing, this case certainly is sympathetic. 35 years this couple has been trying to live the American dream. They have several U.S. citizen children left without parents. The whole family is in chaos. I pointed out, and it's too late now, but early on, this family, rather than relying on the asylum, could have pursued employment. In fact, I remember back in the 90s, I've been practicing law a long time, I would get a lot of people who had asylum. And I said it was a ticking time bomb. Get an employer to petition you before the asylum gets denied and put in deportation. Again, these couples didn't consult with me back then. But as the Trump administration continues with its enforcement priorities and mass deportations, there's going to be more news about instances like these heartbreaking, heart-wrenching stories that could really cause fear and concern among immigrant communities. Now, understanding the reasons behind the immigration enforcement action is key. That's why I presented this video, that it's not just simply picking up a couple. You have to know that they had been ordered deported, had their day in court, had their due process. So that's why I am committed to keeping you updated with the latest information and guidance, especially during Trump's era or time as president and his enforcement priorities, where he's making immigration enforcement a key to his policies and administration. So please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. I'm Michael Gurfinkel, and thank you for watching U.S. Immigration TV.